All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is November meeting of the Alexandria Transit Company Board of Directors. Thank you all for being here tonight, those in the room and those who are here virtually. So we will go ahead and start with our public comment portion of the meeting. Oh, I'm sorry, calling of the roll.
Chair Caplan.
Here.
Vice Chair Feist. Kendall Taylor.
Here.
Matt Harris.
Present.
Hillary Orr.
Here.
Ajaycia Thomas.
Present.
Marant Omai. Jesse O'Connell.
Here.
Arthur Wicks.
Here.
Chair Caplan, you have a quorum. Those absent, Vice Chair Feist and Marant Omai.
And Steve indicated he was traveling for business, but was unable to be in a place where he could join us virtually. So he has an excused absence tonight. We'll go ahead and start public comment. I know we have at least one speaker who's here in the room, so I'll read our public comment policy to kick us off. So we are about to convene into the public comment period of our meeting. All dashboard meetings include a public comment period at the beginning of the meeting, as we believe it is crucial for us to hear from our riders and community members. The board is here to listen. However, please keep in mind the public comment period is not designed to be a discussion. Accordingly, please do not expect the board to respond to your concerns or questions tonight. We take any concerns and questions seriously and need sufficient time to process and research any issues if need be. Board members will respond to your questions and concerns at a future meeting or have the proper staff member get back to you at the appropriate time. Please note personnel matters are not a part of the public comment period. However, please know that we take any personnel questions seriously. You are asked to contact the Dash administration with any such concerns. We ask that all speakers and members of the audience maintain civility and respect for any divergent views that others possess. Further, we ask that speakers please address their comments to the board directly rather than the audience. The board will take pre-registered speakers first, and then I will invite others who wish to speak who may not have pre-registered. For future meetings, you may pre-register on the website dashbus.com on the board directors page. I will now call the first speaker. Please remember your individual speakers allotted 3 minutes for your comments. If you are speaking on behalf of a neighborhood civic association or unit owners association, please identify yourself accordingly. You may be recognized for up to 5 minutes. So we'll take speakers in the room, and Mr. Gronenberg, you are recognized. You can use the podium if you choose.
Thank you. Here I am again by popular demand. And tonight I would like to discuss bus stops. It is commendable that the ultimate goal is to have ADA compliant bus stops. I might need them myself someday. But making bus stops ADA compliant is going to take a lot of time and money with curb modifications and ramps and things like that. So why don't we consider a near-term, very minor investment that will have a very big benefit, namely prohibiting parking in all bus stops. It's not only safer for the passengers, but it's safer for drivers of cars who often, when the bus stops in the traffic lane, the drivers often pull across the double yellow line to get around the bus. Now, here is a New York City bus stop sign from about 40 or 50 years ago. Raymond probably remembers this sign. And it says here, bus stop, no standing, all on one side. Bus stop, no standing. All the signs say that. They've since modernized the signs. Now the signs are at the top of the pole with more information, but it still says no standing. You cannot park in a bus stop in New York City legally. And starting November 15th in Washington, D.C., it will cost you $100 if you park in a bus stop or a bus lane. Now, I learned to drive in Brooklyn, New York, and so did Sandy Modell. You may remember her. Sandy and I discussed this years ago, and we both remember that when we learned to drive, we were told you can not park in front of a fire hydrant, a driveway, or a bus stop. We accepted it. That was the way it was. In fact, however, in our historic and supposedly progressive city, we invite people to park in bus stops. Right here on King and Fairfax Street, the northbound bus stop, cars are parked in that bus stop. When you wait for the bus, you have to wait in between the cars and flag down the bus. We must think that drivers are somehow superior to bus passengers and we give them special rights. Well, I don't agree. So I
30 seconds remaining.
I encourage you to make a New Year's resolution to ban parking in all bus stops in the city of Alexandria in 2024. Thank you very much and Happy New Year to one and all.
Thank you, Bob. Pause, as you know, is dear to my heart, your comments tonight. It's actually, well, we'll take any other public speakers, but it's fortuitous. We have a new director of transportation environmental services who joins us, a staff member who would be very instrumental if such a request were to go to traffic and parking board. And so we're actually glad Adriana is able to hear your concerns, and thank you for speaking tonight. I'll ask our secretary, are there any other registered speakers?
No others.
So we will ask in the room if there's anybody who wishes to be recognized at this time who didn't pre-register. I don't see none. I will ask if there's anybody on the Zoom who would like to be recognized. Please use the raise hand feature, and we'll pause for a moment to see if anyone wishes to make comments.
No hands appear to have gone up, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close public comment. Thank you so much. I'll ask if Hillary, if you want to introduce Adriana now to us.
Yes, we have our new director of TNES here with us tonight, Adriana Castaneda. And she just wanted to come and say hello and maybe say a few words to you all and just meet you in person.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me and inviting me to the meeting. Thank you, Hillary, for letting me know about the meeting. I think this is like my second to last stop before I meet all my commissions as part of the Director of Transportation and Environmental Services. Do know your comment. I noticed that some of the conversations that Hillary has been sharing with me in terms of updating the bus stops and so forth. I'll talk to the team and see what's the plan to ensure that those signs are changed or revised appropriately. And I'm just here to listen, to hear some of your conversations. I met with Josh before. He took me around the facility, great facility. I know that we have some great projects moving forward. And I'm just here to be a partner and see if I can collaborate and ensure that we can move things forward.
Well,
Thank you.
You're always welcome at any of our meetings. So sometimes we're at the DAS facility, sometimes we're here, and sometimes we're at the West End City Hall. But you know, we're very happy to have you. Hillary is a wonderful representative for TNS on the board, and you know, but we certainly partner with you, and I work with Jan very closely with you in the position. And, so yeah, we look forward to that, and thank you also for your comments about bus stop parking, which is something that we put in our budget priorities letter, as you well know, as the city manager.
And her son is a Dash rider as well.
Oh, nice.
Yes, positive feedback all the time.
Yes.
He loves riding.
Very good. All right. So we will go on. I know Ross is joining us. Is Ross virtual or?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Ross, hi. So we are going to have an update on our Dash Advisory Committee, which was stood up kind of right as the pandemic was getting started, but they, under Ross's leadership and working with the staff here at Dash, are doing some really incredible things and helping to ensure that they are strong advocates for the needs of Dash. And so Ross, we're glad to give you some time to kind of talk about where the DAC, you know, what your vision is for the DAC, and also how we can work to help support that and make it a great experience. So Ross, I know you have some presentation slides. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So thank you again for inviting me to come and speak on behalf of my colleagues on the Dash Advisory Committee. I just wanted to quickly go over, I don't want to read every word here on these slides, but we were, as David pointed out, established in 2020, right as the pandemic hit. So the first couple of years of the DAC was completely virtual, and we frankly didn't make as much progress, I think, as members would have liked during that period for obvious reasons. We meet at least once a quarter, and in fact, this year we've added an extra meeting already to deal with issues. Our main mandate is twofold. One is to exist as a communication link between Dash and the riders, and the second is to serve as a sort of ambassadorial role for Dash to the larger Alexandria community, collecting feedback on service-related issues. We work, I think, harmoniously with Josh and his senior team around various aspects of operations and service needs. And we have done our best, I think, particularly in the last couple of years, to actively engage with the community through meeting folks at bus stops, riding the buses and talking to people very vigorously, as well as using social media to get across our views, as well, and more importantly, the views of other writers to Dash management. I might point out that Marat is a distinguished alumnus of the DAC who managed to rise up to your board of directors. So I hope he found his experience on the DAC very useful. We go to the next slide. So at the moment, we are constituted to have up to 17 members on the DAC. We have at present 13 members. That membership reflects most of the bus lines in the city, but not all the bus lines. We were happy within this past year to finally get our first school representative, Sama El Gorshal, to join us from Alexandria City High School. And already she's providing very valuable insights, not only from the point of view of student writers, but in fact, the immigrant community on the West End, which she is very familiar with in terms of their needs. So some of the things that we've done over the last couple of years is provide input into the new Dash network implementation, which was successfully undertaken. We provide comments to the annual TDP and the budget process with the city for Dash. We've written support letters for grant submissions by Dash to various regional funding entities, and have provided comments and testimony to City Council on Dash budget requests. In fact, the next slide, in the past year, we have invited the mayor to our meeting. We had a very spirited 2-hour plus conversation with the mayor about promoting Dash as what we had called a vital city utility, and underscored our viewpoint that the city needs to be forward-looking in terms of both the free fare and how we balance the budget needs of the city against the current bus system in the city, and then to look to innovative ways to fully meet the transit plan for the city for the future, which, as all of you know, we're still playing catch up against the old transit plan. And we're hoping that perhaps through the new budget process that's coming up for FY25, we will finally be able to achieve our 2022 plan. Thanks to Hillary Orr, we were able to have formal representation on the Duke Street in Motion planning process. And we certainly look forward to other opportunities to participate in city transportation planning through various members on our committee who are very excited to play such a role. We've spent a lot of time talking about the Dash website development. It's almost there, but not quite where I think most of the members of the DAC would like to see it at the moment. We continue to show up at special events for Dash. We're looking forward to having a representative to volunteer for the Dash 40th birthday celebration this coming spring. And we continue to promote with City Council, the city manager, and others, electric buses as a cleaner and more environmentally friendly way of transportation. And finally, next slide, please. We are very interested in means of communicating to the writer community. And what we've learned in recent weeks is that Dari and Pashto, particularly on the west end of the city, has become an important language for the refugees who have resettled in Alexandria as a means to communicate important issues related to school programs, city services. And we very much hope that just as the other languages, the official languages of the city have been used by Dash, we now will think about how do we use Dari and Pashto to reach an important segment, a growing segment of the rider population. We continue to work with the Dash staff on various customer surveys to try to improve it from our perspective that we've seen as Dash riders. And we continue to look at Dash as an important element to the student population in the city. So we've been very active in the last 2 years. We're looking increasingly towards new opportunities for 2024 and beyond. I will tell you what I think where some of our limitations have been. We have tried for several years, urging city officials and others to offer us new members' names, particularly from the Latino community. And that particular corridor in our transit system is underrepresented on the DAC. And it's something that I would hope that we could improve over time. And I feel like we continue to have the need for a younger demographic, which is something that we've been working very hard and have brought the age down, I'm proud to say, over the last 2 years. And we've improved the gender balance as well on the DAC, but there's still more work to be done there. So with that, I'm going to just stop and ask if there are any questions or concerns that people would like to discuss.
Open this up to colleagues if anyone has questions or comments for Ross.
I might just jump on the tail of Ross's presentation and, publicly, personally thank him for the role that he took. As you all know, or those of you who've been on the board now for a while, this was long a vision of mine to have this type of a group helping us to be the eyes and ears of the customer and of Dash. Ross, I don't know if you got voluntold or if no one stepped up or the silence was deafening, whatever happened, you took the reins and really have been a great partner for the organization, a champion of this committee, and I'm just really proud of what they've done. I try to stay out of their business and join them to talk about what they would like me to talk about, but it's very much always been envisioned as a group that can make their own decisions about their agenda and the things that they feel are important to talk about, while at the same time our team joins their meetings to present on what's going on internally within the organization. So again, thank you, Ross, for your time and effort and energy in this. And I would echo his comments that if anyone knows any folks out there who would serve well to bring the different perspectives to the committee, it's really important that they come to us. We rarely have had anyone we've said no to. And I would also add that I'm hopeful that we can continue to expand the presence of any individuals with mobility impairments or anything that may create challenges that we as staff might not recognize could be barriers to accessing our service. We really want to see those folks as well to continue to be an active part of this group wherever possible. So.
Ross,
Thank you, Josh. I think the point is your points are well taken, and I would be remiss if I didn't thank Whitney, who left us for North Carolina as the inaugural staff liaison to the DAC, and then most recently Martin, who's now triple-hatted, continues to show up as a real rock star for the DAC in terms of being our liaison and offering us all sorts of useful information, both at meetings and in between. I will say that this group is a very informed group and a very feisty group, and there's a lot of communication in between meetings, between members and with the Dash staff. And we do appreciate very much, Josh, you and your team for helping us through answering the various questions that we pose.
I have a question and a comment for you. So I'll ask the question first, which is, so you mentioned some of the barriers or needs within the community that you've identified that aren't served. So I think getting a student rep was a really big step. So I'm curious, how did you recruit and identify that person who served?
We landed up going to one of the assistant principals at the school, having failed 3 times before to identify the right person. And this assistant principal immediately understood our needs and identified this student. Josh interviewed her, I interviewed her, and we thought she would be an ideal candidate. And frankly, after our first meeting, we knew we exceeded expectations with her abilities. So we're very pleased by that.
And then just a comment, I'm going to echo what Josh said about the enormous work that the DAC has done in the few years that it's existed. And I think particularly, as you all are having a more visible role serving on city work groups like the Duke Street in motion, and engaging with council and the managers, they're formulating the budget and echoing a lot of our priors. It's really important for them to hear directly from not just us, but also from people who are definitely the grassroots who are there. And so I think that's a really, really great part of the mission you're doing. I just wanted to say further that, although this kind of is a group that was created really to advise staff, we do want you to feel you have a direct line to the board as you need to, and we want to make sure your team feels, or your committee members feel, that they can also engage with us directly if there's a need to bring an issue forward. And so, I've talked with Josh about, would there be a good time for me to come to one of your meetings, just so we can have some back and forth dialogue and make sure we're all on the same page. So I just want to extend those comments to you directly and just say, as we can help, we want to be there helping to champion this and making this a great experience for it.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it very much.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question. Thank you again for all your work and your committee members. When it comes to recruitment, is there a particular application that folks need to fill out, and how do they find that information? When you talk about we need to recruit a certain segment and demographic of folks, how are you reaching them? Are you on the bus? Is a survey question included into all the surveys asking people want to serve on the DAC commission? Like, how are we getting the word out that this committee exists?
It's a very good question. Thank you for asking it. So there is an application online. I will tell you, this is one of the issues we've had with the Dash website, because people filled out applications and then it was never seemed to be registered with Dash. I think that has been corrected, if I'm remembering correctly. But there was an issue there for a considerable period of time, even though it says fill out this application and you will learn about it. There was some difficulty, but that I think has been resolved. Am I correct, Martin?
Yes, yeah, that's correct. And the website is dashbus.com/DAC. What we're asking now is that they just send an email indicating their interest, and then we take it from there.
Thank you. And other means of advertising is, I believe, in the survey that is underway on the system. We did ask if people were interested in serving on the DAC. Is that correct, Martin? We asked you to think about that. I don't know, did it get included in the survey or not?
I think we had there's 30 questions on the survey, so I think we had to cut a few. So I think that did not make it to the final survey, but we do have contact information for riders that are on routes that are not represented. So if we wanted to reach out to them after the survey, we'd be able to do that.
Okay, awesome. I think that'd be a great idea to follow up with folks who put out the survey and then to remind them, well, thank them for filling out the survey. Then opportunities to get involved with Dash would also help with recruitment.
Yeah, and I would just add on to all of that. It has been a real challenge, the combination of the time in the pandemic. We held off for a long time on starting this group for that very reason. And then we've had, we've now been without Whitney for quite some time, and we've been working through the recruitment process, and we've rethought the marketing and public communications piece of Dash, and we've kind of been reinventing that. And that's where this lives. So I think it's also a little bit of a victim of just the resources not being there for someone to really own this. Like mentioned, Martin is covering this, but he's not the permanent, staff liaison. And I'm hopeful that when we get that staff back up and we've got sort of the department and the organization the way we want it, that we'll be able to really have that as a priority. So
Okay,
That would be the other piece.
thank you.
Anybody else?
I want to make a comment for Russ. This is a little bit personal, but when we first gathered in the middle of the pandemic, there was only a handful of us, and we didn't even know what we were supposed to do. I remember that the first time that we met, it was about so what do we do now? Just a bunch of folks sitting around, and Whitney was there trying to bring some structure and everything. But I would like to commend you with with what you accomplished with your leadership, and it's very aspiring to see all the things that are accomplished and how you're looking forward to grow it and all that. So I would like to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, Ross, thank you for joining us tonight, and I hope you and I will have many conversations in the future. So
Indeed, I look forward to it. Thank you all very much. Unfortunately, I need to get on a conference call here on the West Coast, so I'm going to leave you now, but I appreciate the opportunity to present.
that art isn't in your house. I was going to commend you on
Yes.
nice home, but bye.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, we'll move on to the consideration of the meeting minutes in the October meeting that were included in our packet. Are there any revisions to minutes as they were presented? If not, I'll take a motion to adopt.
Just,
Matt, is there a second?
sorry,
Art,
just,
Art?
under agenda one, my last name is Wicks with an S, so I don't know if we're entertaining grammatical things, but if we can fix that, that would be lovely.
All right, well.
Actually, we changed your name.
That's all right. I'll start the paperwork tomorrow.
All right, Beth will note that.
Thank
And I assume that your motion covers the amendment with the
amendments.
amendment from Art. Second by Jesse, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstention? Passing unanimously. Move into the chair's report. So one item that we'll be covering that we kind of queued up, which is last month, which is the potential for recruitment of additional board members. So we might as well just, we have quite a few agenda items, so we'll kind of jump into that. I have it here. Beth had prepared a timeline from the last time we had a board recruitment, because, two of you were only experienced as candidates, and then, some of, and Art has not been through this, but sort of what's involved in recruiting board members. And I'll go ahead and pass, since, staff prepared this, I'll go ahead and pass these out, just so we kind of know what's involved if we do a board member recruitment. In terms of, we stand up a committee of board members, we solicit applications from the community, the committee kind of interviews and winnows that down, and then the board considers the finalists that they bring forward and decides whether to seat board members. And in terms of what we can do, we are currently at the smallest size that this board can do. This board is required to have at least 6 citizen members. That is where we stand right now. At least one of those citizen members has to have experience in transportation. We meet that with either Marat and Steve, both work in the transportation industry. I think we could argue that Matt works in the transportation industry. So we're well served there in terms of any special constituents we have to have. But we could have up to 8 citizen members. And, just as we were talking with Ross about, what the needs are of the DAC to be representative of the community, there perhaps are things that we could do to be more representative of the community, and that those seats could be available to have. So that might be a case for recruiting. On the flip side, I'll just say, for example, I'm aware that the school board is considering, are they too large? They're 9 members right now, and so they're considering, is that a hindrance to their effectiveness? It does, and I know I hear this from staff occasionally, that it's hard to kind of get to know everyone, kind of what everyone's perspective is when it's a very large group. I will say for myself, I haven't had to call all the board members often, and maybe I would do it more often if we were a smaller board. Because the last time I did, I think, was when we were going to Fair Free, and I called all of you, and I was on the phone for over 8 hours between covering everyone. I mean, we were socializing too, because we weren't seeing each other since it was still COVID, but it certainly reminded me of just, it is a lot of time to kind of get to know where folks stand. And does that affect the quality of decision-making that comes out of it? So I'm not advocating one way or the other, but we need to decide tonight if we want to do a recruitment to seat a committee and kind of give them just some very broad direction about, we want you to bring forward 1, 2, and are there things that we want you to consider as we go out in the community and say, yeah, this is what we want? Or do we want to say, we're doing well as we are, and we'll wait until we have to go out and recruit, which would be if we lost 1 additional citizen member. The timing of it is such that we could finish this in time for the stockholders meeting, which is when council, as the stockholders, would approve any new board member. So that's why we're sort of saying, if we're gonna do it, now's the time to do it, unless we decide we want to wait until we have to do it. So with that, I will open for discussion, and ask, what's your preference?
And so this process here is entirely discretionary, right? Like this is not enshrined in our bylaws.
I gave away, I did
Way
keep a
that-
copy
sorry.
myself.
Yeah.
Were there any extra stuff there?
I guess what I'm asking is,
That worked so hard on putting this together, and I was like, here, you all.
Sure. So our bylaws are not prescriptive in the manner in which we need to conduct a recruitment, right? Like we just, it talks about the number we have to have, right? So.
The
because-
bylaws would state that, the bylaws would state the stockholders ultimately have to agree to anyone that we send forward. We kind of work like a publicly traded company that would say, here's our board slate, stockholders, yay or nay, but they don't sort of get all the candidates and say, well, we don't take your recommendation, we want to seat this person. So those are things that are prescribed.
Right, so I guess what I'm asking is, so as a board, we obviously could follow this process if we wanted.
Mhm.
Could we instead choose to sort of establish a board seat that is filled by a sort of delegated representative? Just for instance, could we say that the DAC chair has a seat on this board?
I think the bylaws in that case have to be amended, because you would have to say, because right now it just says we have 6 to 8 citizen/rider members. But if we wanted to say the DAC chair is a member of this board, I think that we would just have to go to stockholders and say, we want to change the bylaws and we want to say one citizen seat belongs to that person. I would say maybe we should ask Ross. What he
Sure.
thought of that before
I guess,
we
and the only reason I'm asking is I'm just trying to think of like, what are other mechanical approaches that we could ensure a full board that are not necessarily as time intensive as the full recruitment process? Like, could we sort of simultaneously get the kinds of perspectives that we want, but in a way that sort of the vacancies resolve themselves a little bit more expediently than when we have a vacancy and do a full recruitment?
I think potentially, but one thing I would just say, having been through many of these before, is I think, because council is very used to the way they do boards and commissions, and we are very different.
We are very different.
And so, because we send up names and candidates who would, might have lobbied city council and say, do this, and they really, because the only way they can react is reject the slate and send it back to us. So I think that reason we've done the full recruitment that way is we want to be as open and transparent to the community to say, anyone who wants to be considered, come and be part of this process. And so I think that we would have to talk to the stockholders about, if we wanted to be prescriptive and say people in these seats should be, they're probably going to want to make sure, are they things that people can compete for, that, we're not just sort of saying, oh, we want to pick this person because they're, a friend. But I think I hear what you're saying, and I yes, this is a lot of work, which is kind of what the idea of this timeline was to say. And those who've served on committee, I know Matt, I know Jasha has, Hillary has several times, know that this takes a lot of time and a lot of staff resources too, frankly, that Josh and Beth bring to and Whitney probably when she was here.
How much does it cost when we put the advertisements in the newspaper? Because that's how I responded, and I think if we're gonna outlay that type of money, we should probably go for multiple people. Otherwise, we've always had a, unofficial urging to make sure we've got adequate representation from West End, underserved community members. And then remember, we had our big gender problem. There were no females on this commission. So, that we do have a little bit of internal discretion when we go recruit people, or at least interview them.
Sure.
So I don't know what the ideal number is and whether this is good or not, but we sort of have to stock up at some point.
Right.
So I don't, to Jesse's point about making it more efficient, I wonder too, when you put 3 of us on a committee, it changes the dynamic in terms of the, for Beth's resources too, of having everything public and making sure that all of our meetings are available for, I don't know if we did them live, but setting that up and then trying to coordinate 3 people's schedules was really tough too. But if it's 2 people, and if the board can say, here are things that we prioritize and that we feel like we are missing, and kind of lay that out ahead of time, I think 2 people could probably go through applications if we decided to recruit and come up with, whether it's 1 or 2 or more for the board to then discuss. It might make it a more efficient and kind of easier process to go through. I don't know if last time we laid out really what our goals were with the board, what we felt like
That's-
we
I
were
think that's
missing. And so I
something
think that would just a conversation would be helpful, and then two people could move it along. And I would, it is time intensive. So I mean, I would say recruit. And if we have two great people, then go ahead and get them if we want to do that. But I'm also fine with the smaller board.
Could I just clarify what you were suggesting the two people do? Were they gonna also do were they gonna do everything that the 3-member committee did last time? Okay, so so it's not that the full board would interview the people that the. 2
Right,
members-
we reviewed all the applications and we discussed and we brought forward some, and then we kind of told the board why we selected certain folks.
Okay, so you would, just to repeat that process, but only with 2 people because of, it is a lot easier to facilitate because of certain requirements that are triggered with 3, is that?
And one other question, to Matt's point about newspaper advertising, are we not allowed to piggyback on the city's board and commission vacancy process?
We do.
We do, okay.
And that is actually an important avenue for us. So we try to
Okay.
time it so that we get out on one of those press
On one of
releases,
those,
but
yeah,
I don't remember though, if people then, it just says they have to come talk to, they have to come through our process, because I don't think they actually apply directly to the clerk, or does the clerk take them and send them to us? I don't remember.
Yeah,
but-
I don't know, but also I don't know that it, because we are separate from the city, the requirements for what you put on the application might be different.
Yes,
And
yes.
so we can get more information, and I know we did that with ad hoc committees. We have more leeway to ask questions to get people that are underrepresented on
I
our
think
board.
the cost is mostly on the staff time that's involved, unless, because we don't, and maybe we did put some standalone ads, but a lot of it is like social media stuff and dashes, and then the cities, the way they advertise all the board and commission
Well, I
vacancies, which
think
we
at
don't have
that
to
time,
pay
we
for.
must have had problems recruiting because, I responded to it
Okay.
in the newspaper. But I think two people's a no-brainer.
Okay, all right,
And then I think either bring the committee's recommendation to the group with their resumes, or again, when I was brought on, I was interviewed by the entire
yeah.
board.
We decided that wasn't efficient enough, because then what if they couldn't come to our one meeting
Well,
date,
They
you know,
haven't committed.
but, and also, yeah, it
yeah.
was just to try to make it more efficient. I'm fine with 2 members, I think, though, so I'm hearing from everyone that they do want to do that there's interest in the recruitment right now. I haven't heard anyone say don't recruit, is that? If anyone's arguing that
I'm
position,
neutral.
you're neutral, okay,
I'm neutral. If we recruit, I would go with 2, but
okay.
Yeah, and because the argument is if we don't do it now, when we drop to 8, we have to do it.
Yes.
When we drop to,
We're-
6 citizen members, so we would have to, we'd be below where we are, and so we would have to recruit at least 1 at that point, which, we can, and hopefully nobody is imminently, I like all these, so I'm hoping no one is imminently looking to leave, but, you're.
So, this is a little bit of a hybrid, scenario, but, there's this, city academy. I don't know if you're aware of that. Okay, so, that's a great opportunity to actually, partner with them.
Mhm.
To see if we can recruit, through them, so that might actually cut back some of the staff time of, advertising, those are people that are, inherently involved or
Mhm.
wanna be involved in the city. They wanna learn about the city. They're either new, they wanna get involved and all that. So, and I've been, through one of the sessions a couple years ago, and, the quality of people who attend that and their ambition was very, noteworthy. So, I think, instead of starting from scratch, that might be a good starting point, to ask if the staff that's running that can also pitch, board membership, because at the end of the day, the whole, setup for the city academy is to bring people on board with, different commissions and all that other stuff.
I think that's a great, if we haven't been talking, I think we should definitely ensure that network's out there. We also need to advertise along that. We want riders to know about it.
Yeah.
People who are plugged into looking at, dash service need to know about it too. So we use a lot of different ways, and actually, when you applied, we did have some, I don't know, it was when you apply, we had some challenges one time we recruited getting candidates, but both, in the last, I think, 3 recruitments, we had gotten 12 for one, and I think 9 or 10 for another one that we had. I think, Josh, right, when you joined, we had a recruitment that had like 9 or, as general manager, we had 9 or 10 applicants, and the last time we had 12, which I think was a record. I think we did have one where I think Ajayesha then was, the second time we recruited was ultimately, so where we only had 4, which didn't give us a lot to work with. Although we found 2 very good people out of that, and then actually added some, that's when the additional seats were added, when council said, well, go out and get more representation in the community. And it was the gender balance issue at that point that we were dealing with. But I think based on the last time, we probably won't have problems getting enough people. We probably will have more people who we want than we have seats for. But that's an excellent suggestion for how we recruit. I think I want to make sure staff notes that for when we do go out. But so I maybe just even a show of hands, who wants to recruit right now, and let's just figure out who wants to recruit. 1, 2, is that a hand? Okay, 3. And anyone? Okay, so we have 3. You're a maybe. Okay.
4, yeah.
4.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm also like.
Is anyone a no on recruiting right now? I hear some
When you
maybes,
say
but
recruiting, do you mean expanding the size of the board, or do you mean actually going out and recruiting?
well, the board is flexible right now between 6 and 8, and so we're at 6. So we recruit. We would
I mean, yeah, when you say recruit, so you mean expand the board?
Post
potentially
for,
get up to 8.
Yeah.
put an application out.
Yeah.
Put an application and say, do we want to? And we could. We could, if we get no applications, or anyone we think would add to the board. We don't have to seat anyone.
If we advertise for 2 and we only hypothetically get 1 that's qualified, can we rescind the second open position?
I don't know. We have to even be prescriptive. It's just
Okay.
say we're recruiting for potential board members,
Okay.
and and leave it at that, since we're not required to say we're taking 2.
Okay, I mean, in that case, getting close to our threshold minimum, I think we need to, just my opinion,
Okay.
get the ball rolling and stock up just in case we do lose somebody. And I mean, it's possible we even lose somebody in the prescriptive categories that we have to have. And then, we'd be correct.
Right.
So.
Okay. So recruit or not recruit? One more time. Recruit. Who wants to recruit? 1, 2, 3, 4. Who doesn't want to recruit? Who is neutral? I'm gonna break the tie and say we recruit. Okay. Well, I mean, it's an informal vote, and I don't know how our secretary wishes to record this in the minutes, but we can.
But with that
The
said,
city members say yes,
Okay.
and the city manager appointee say no.
No, we're just being
Okay.
agreeable,
Yeah.
well,
Okay, you don't-
in that case,
so-
I do think it should be a 2-person
Okay.
operation.
I'm hearing support for 2 members. If anyone doesn't, let's hear an argument for
No.
keeping it 3, because I'm fine with 2. We just, have to then make sure that we have 2 people represent kind of different camps on the board, not camp, but just, different perspectives on the board, so that we're getting, candidates that I think will be palatable when they come forward to the, to the board as a whole. Really kind of have to understand what are we looking for? And so that's why, we want to give some instructions if we do go forward. So to a 2-member committee, what is kind of big picture important? I've heard some mention of different kinds of diversity.
Yeah,
For the selection committee, I'm sorry,
So
what
we're gonna see a
looking for?
2-member selection committee, and they're gonna basically say, okay, we're gonna go out and recruit staff, write an announcement that basically says we're interested in candidates who might bring these things. to the board.
Oh, okay.
So what are
okay,
those?
yeah.
What are those big picture things, so that way they are doing what you're wanting to get from it?
Sorry, I go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to clarify, because I thought that Hillary's idea, that idea was a good idea.
I think
So that
we
know what
we
we're doing.
accepted 2
Yeah,
members.
that's what I
Yeah,
wanted to know, that we're gonna do that.
I mean, I think we pretty much know what we want. And I get a little bit worried when we're a little too specific. I mean, we'll see the resumes, and we can only read what's on the resume and then interview these people.
Well, only the 2-member committee will do that. We're just gonna get,
Right,
we're gonna get the
right.
readout.
And then
on it.
I think last time, were you on it? Okay, you came back with, pretty good detailed analysis of each of the applicants. And it was thorough. And from that, we made a decision, and it was a good vote. And I remember, we had 2 people, maybe 3.
Yeah.
And I think there were even more who were really eligible and were in the running, and, you guys made it. Actually, it was you and someone else were up, wasn't it?
So I think what I remember from the committee, so we struggled a little bit about how many members to seat, which is at this point, we were hearing we'll seat up to 2, because remember we could have seated 2 or 3, and the board actually then ended up having to vote as to where to go. And I think some of that may also come from what I heard from committee members was, well, we would have liked more direction from the full board before we embarked, and Jaysha Hillary, since you were on that committee, am I capturing what, that's what I heard. If I'm, does anyone want to add from that process? But I'm trying to help because I'm thinking about how do we make sure the committee feels that they have an appropriate charge. That's kind of what I'm trying to get out of tonight. So right now it's very open-ended, so we would take basically whoever the committee decides that how they want to advertise it, the committee to be determined. But do you want to add anything to it?
So I think what I would suggest is to the extent that we have candidates with a background in sort of like grant application and grant solicitation, I think when we think of the type of activities that this board has been involved in stewarding recently and what we expect to happen in the future, I think somebody who has deep experience kind of going after, both federal and sort of private sector sources of funding, that could be a good piece of advice that, so someone with that experience, I think could be valuable to have in the mix in terms of the guidance that we're giving staff.
So we would put in the announcement, basically, these are things that are desirable, not, that would add. So that's, okay, so we've got one. I think that's a very good one. We had previously a member who was very skilled at public communications and kind of crisis management. Larry Chambers, many of you served with, who's since left the board. Is that something that we want to try to endeavor to? Is that something we would say it would be desirable? Maybe not.
I think the only risk of putting that in writing is people then go like, well, why do they think they need a crisis communication?
That's like public relations. We could say public relations.
Yeah, that's true. Yes,
we don't say crisis.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, so my point before was not that we need to put this in the posting, but that like whoever is looking on the selection committee just has a sense. I don't think we need to like. put
Okay,
these
so
up
you
there.
said
It's just,
posting worked the way you felt like we got good candidates based on the posting, and then we can.
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And the description itself would sort of draw certain people to the position.
Okay. And I know in the past, and we didn't just have time to do this tonight, was to look, actually, we used to plot where each board member lived on a map of the cities. That way we could look at neighborhoods, and certainly that's something the committee could do as they consider applicants. And then I remember sometimes getting a map of the committee of the prospective applicants and kind of looking at, did that plug holes, or were we kind of duplicating, where we already had pretty good geographic representation. But we may actually, I think we're probably decently represented now between East and West End. We sometimes struggle. Oh, okay, Dacia's shaking her head, but we have more West End members than we used to on the board. We used to be very east of Quaker Lane, and that's we have at least, because you and Steve are both west of Quaker now. That's it. Okay.
So can we then maybe?
I don't know if Morocco, I didn't know if Morocco lived west of Quaker, but.
No,
Okay.
no, I'm old.
Oh, you're old town, okay.
So, if everybody agrees what Hillary's suggestion is, I think that's very good, so that we keep it to ourselves as an evaluation criteria rather than advertising, because then we might miss certain qualities and all that other stuff. And the other part is how are we planning to compile those criteria, like via emails or like?
Well, the 2-member committee would basically meet before staff put an announcement on the street, look at the draft of what we did in the last time and say, okay, we should change this, we should change that. I think what we have is probably pretty good, but there, as I said, that was why I sort of wanted, if there were any big picture things we needed to consider, to kind of put that out tonight, so that way the committee and staff could be working on that, and the committee could say, okay, yeah, this kind of fits. It sounds like we're giving the committee a lot more discretion in sort of how they will do this, which is fine. And then we can, but we're gonna be putting a lot on the committee to really kind of determine the direction that we go in, and it's going to be a 2-member committee on the board. So, but if folks are satisfied with that, we can go forward with that. Who would like to be on the committee? We got to settle that tonight.
I'm gonna volunteer, but it seems like because that's why I'm asking all these questions. Because it seems like there's gonna be some work that needs to be done by the committee to kind of put that evaluation criteria and all that other stuff. So I'll be happy to do that if nobody else.
The question is, how many people do you want brought back to the full board?
Well, so the committee last time basically identified, said we want to fill, well, we had to decide 2 or 3 seats, and basically said these are the people, and those are the only ones that we looked at. So the board did not get the.
I thought we voted on the members we brought on.
So
it's a full board.
Oh, yes, but we didn't
We narrowed
interview.
it down.
We didn't interview. So the committee had narrowed down, and then we had to decide. whether we were gonna see 2 or 3, but we only looked at the people who were finalists and.
Right, so how many do you want as finalists? That's what I'm asking.
I feel like we're maybe making it a little too complicated. Like, I think that if the board can just state like, we value geographic diversity, we value equity, we're looking at just people with different types of experience, and we can look at that, then you get the applications, you see how many, and then you go from there, right? Like, you as the committee decide, we had 5 really great applications, we're gonna interview them all, and if you as the committee think, you know, we want to bring 2 forward or 1 forward or whatever it is, like, you know, I think we can kind of figure that out as we go. I don't have to decide it all right now. And I don't think it has to be that complicated or that, like.
Right.
Yeah. It just really depends on
If
who
you
applies.
want to go, I'm happy to.
I was gonna say, I agree with Hillary, just like the questions that are being asked of the people that are being reviewing the applications and asking it during the interviews of the candidates. Is you to include that criteria, right?
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. I agree with the 2-person committee, because of like the issues last time, but. So,
It doesn't have to be 2, we can always do 3.
No, the second it becomes 3, we actually, we have to make every meeting publicly available, it has to be available.
Yeah.
on
Oh,
notice,
okay.
right? The idea is if it's 2. it
Again,
actually be like
my
a-
offer is the same, like if you would like to be on it, just. Okay.
I'm good with filling out
This
the
is like I'm
spec.
getting into some.
Filling out the experience.
All right, yeah,
So I think, and is that, I think we would have to have an announcement out, and probably the application deadline would pass by the time of our December meeting. But I think there would be time before the committee would interview if we wanted to have a session to basically discuss any further criteria for considering the applications. So is that might, and I appreciate and also realize that, you know, I sprung a lot on y'all tonight that maybe we hadn't all thought through kind of how we would do this. And so I'm thinking for myself, you know, how would I kind of react to this? So, you know, we may in a month, also having now gotten some perspective on, okay, what are things that we might want to consider, what's sort of, you know.
So when are applications, when is the stakeholders meeting? So
The
what's the deadline?
stockholders meet in February, so we would have to have
So
names
holidays
to
are
them.
coming up, Right.
Right.
So-
And we have a deadline that's probably about, would you say, 3 weeks before a stockholders meeting, so we would have to finalize our slate probably 3 weeks to maybe even a month beforehand. I know they asked for it early, so let's say by mid-January, we would probably have to identify who the candidates are that we want to send to the stock. So we, at our January board meeting, would probably have to vote on what the committee came up with. So that would mean the committee would have to, we would have to solicit applications before the holidays. The committee could probably then reconvene in early January and actually do the interviews and then bring to us.
Well, if I might suggest, I mean, we don't have to do the February stockholders meeting, we could do the May, right, or June, whenever the one later in the year. is,
Well,
right?
we scheduled a special one so we could get you
Because
guys on the
we
board.
were
We went to
eligible,
council,
because we were
basically said, will you
eligible.
give
Okay,
us time? And
Got it,
so
got it,
I think
got it.
council will say, if you could have this done at the stockholders meeting.
I got it.
we
It's
would-
not a twice a year thing, that was a special thing,
Yeah,
okay, got it, okay.
Yeah, because that's, and it's never guaranteed when or if we get time, and so then we would, the
Okay.
board members would just sit until we
I
could
got
get
it.
on their calendar. So that's why, yeah, February is pretty much hard.
And then the last thing I just want to sort of put voice to is, I think it's great that like we will advertise on the thing, but I just want to remind everybody that like, we don't have to just rely on who randomly applies to the thing. Like all of us are empowered to recruit people and talk
Yes.
to people and suggest strong candidates.
They have
right?
to
So,
submit an application. but yes.
100%, exactly. No, I'm just saying like this, we don't have to leave this up to
This
chance.
is, this is
Yeah,
absolutely
right,
on,
yeah.
on us to help as ambassador. This is part of
100%.
our ambassador role.
Right.
Absolutely right, Jesse. So we have a 2-member committee and Marat and Matt who will, basically, so I would suggest you guys meet soon to basically look at the materials we used in the past for recruiting. Also the sources of going to recruit. Marat, great suggestion on the Citizens Academy, at least to be able to push out to that mailing list of alums of that group, to add, if that's not something we've done before, to suggest any further refinements to that, and then staff to get that on the street by, probably first week in December at the latest. And to probably open that, or to, you know, look at what we can do in December for the council recruitment for their boards and commissions, and then have applications by the holidays. That sound a reasonable timeframe?
Quick turnaround, but will Beth be sending us our past materials to look
So
over?
we'll compile that from the last recruitment that we did. Wasn't that long ago, so we'll find them. And we've spent a lot of time through those have been committees. We have improved these every time. So I think these, I hope, are in pretty good shape, just with some suggestions for, you know, other new sources. But I think we've done a good job of trying to explain, what does a board member do? What's the commitment that's involved in here? nodding from
Yeah.
people
I thought
who
it was
applied
great.
recently,
I-
so,
Very clear, yeah.
I think these will be in decent shape, but I think the fresh set of eyes every time is important.
And I think our biggest issue will be having people like tuned in over the holidays to come out and apply.
Well, that's why we want to get it out by the first week of December, where I know the holidays overtake, but I think as long as we're not doing it right around, we probably have a decent shot. And look, if we get very few applications, we can just say, you know what, we're gonna do this again at some point if we don't have to imminently, so.
There is no, rule that would prevent us to do these virtually, right? Do they have to be in person? Can it be virtually? Okay. Okay.
And if the recruiting stuff is pretty good, I mean, you could probably get it out before December 1st, and then even though we have other holidays coming up, at least it's out longer.
Yeah,
It's only the 8th, right?
oh, that's right, it's early.
Pretty early.
Members, half of
Yeah.
To me, the year's over.
Yeah.
feel like no one knows where the brake pedal is, like slowing down. So, thank you for having that discussion. Let me just see if there's any other concerns that we need to address or comments that we just need to address related to how this is gonna go forward. I think staff knows in terms of getting the group together and what they need to share at the first meeting, and the committee members understand the charge. And so we'll put on the December agenda to have a report, and at that point, you'll have your applications, and if you want to talk with us before you do interviews about things that might be important or trends that you've identified in the application pool to help with questions, I think then we could do that in December, and maybe, since we're dealing with specifics at that point, maybe have, be able to give more direct guidance. Fair? Yeah, okay. I just had, thank you for that discussion. I just had one other thing that I mentioned to Josh that I was going to bring up for the group, and I know our city staff will be well aware of this, which is the upcoming renovation of City Hall. I read the article in the Alex Now and understood the briefings. And so what I had said to Josh is I wonder, whether it sounded like most City Hall services are going to relocate to the old health department, which is on the kind of far west end of the city. I know there had been this project has been talked about for a very long time, and before that building was vacant, there was talk of identifying office space within Old Town that would be very close to where City Hall is now. But in thinking of where city services are going to that part of the city, looking at, are there things that Dash and Transit could do to help ensure that people are able to get out there? The old health department is served well, although certainly not as pedestrian or bicycle friendly as this part of town. But I just wanted to see, can we be part of the discussion? Might there be shuttling or other temporary adjustments to our network to accommodate this project? And would there be any potential impact to streets and sidewalks around City Hall while this is going on? Because I know the parking garage and underground is part of this as well, that would potentially impact bus and trolley operations. I'm not expecting to discuss or have a report on this tonight, but I wanted to throw this out to see perhaps that if Dash has not been part of these discussions, that we find out, is there anything that we could offer to do for this that would just help ameliorate the impact of this project? So that's all that we just bring this back. And as I said, I know people work in this building, I'm sure follow this very, very closely and are aware of what a lot of the impacts are, but I want to make sure that we can be a partner if there's anything we can do. And maybe the answer is that we already have that part of the city well served, and we don't feel there's going to be a need to shuttle people out there, and because we're doing more things online or virtually that will address community member needs. So I just bring that forward. I'll yield to Hillary now for the TNS report.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So the city council had their budget retreat this weekend, and from the transportation side, we did talk a little bit about WMATA, and I just can't leave that off of my updates. Just I think we've had conversations. We know that there's a massive funding gap for 2025, FY25, and there's a number of working groups that are looking at structural reform, future revenues, and other ways of kind of bridging that gap in a more sustainable long-term way. So just to know that we are keeping track on this and we are working on it, but we don't have final numbers from WMATA yet. And it's going to be big, and we will figure it out. I wanted to share with you, I don't know if these came out as links, but the transportation team has been putting together annual work programs. And I thought of this because we just published our transit and regional planning one, and I was gonna share that with you all, but then I was like, oh, well, actually, we have a lot of really good ones, so. If these aren't links, I can certainly send them out to the board, but we have been doing kind of these annual work plans for our various programs within transportation, so. I brought our transit and regional coordination, smart mobility, capital bike share, dockless mobility, parking and curbside management, and Vision Zero and safe routes to school, and so these kind of highlight our accomplishments from the prior year and the ongoing things that we do within the program, but also our key initiatives for FY 24. So just wanted to share these with you all. You can pass them around if you want. But that's something that will they're linked to our website. We've been presenting them at boards and commissions. A lot of this too is, we get a lot of questions from boards and commissions about what we're doing, and we have annual presentations to them about various programs. So we kind of tried to standardize it a little bit more so we can just push these out and people can find the information themselves if they're interested in it. So I just wanted to share this with you all.
And I assume these are available, these are like on the website, they're just as accessible digitally as
Yes,
these.
yes, these were supposed to be
handouts.
links. Some I'm still updating and
Okay.
getting on the website, but
That's
most of them are up there.
Dockless, okay.
But it's actually they've been really helpful too, having a new director. We've been using these to brief her on all the programs and kind of have her meet all the staff that's working on the different programs and let them have the opportunity to talk about what we're doing in our key initiatives. Okay. I wanted to bring up the Alex West Small Area Plan process. We are going to be talking about transportation at the November 13th meeting. So at this meeting, this is where we will be presenting proposed street networks as well as pedestrian and bike networks. We're also talking about showing our ongoing transportation initiatives on the West End and talking about the Seminary Beauregard intersection, since the last one of the plan had the ellipse. Which I'm not sure if anybody liked that, but we have looked at a new design for that intersection. So we have some concepts that we'll be talking about with the community. And also there's been a lot of interest in the Seminary West kind of corridor. So we'll be talking to the community about that as well during that meeting. There'll be an open house from 6 to 7 with stations so people can come and talk to staff about different projects and things that are going on. And then there'll be a presentation from like 7 to 7:30, and then maybe a little more time to chat and answer questions after that. But this is this plan, it's looking kind of for the 10 to 30 year horizon. There's the other focus on the 13th is going to be housing and what we're doing with housing kind of in that area. And then let's see, lastly on here, and this is item C, we annually TNS puts forward a slate of projects for our congestion and air quality improvements, or CMAQ, and regional surface transportation program, which is called RSTP project funding. This is a pot of funding that is distributed through NVTA, and jurisdictions kind of get a number and you put forward your projects, and these are 6 years out projects. But we put in how we want to spend. It's usually about 4.5 million annually, but we have kind of up to 5 million because they often come back and change the number and say they have more. So we've given ourselves a little flexibility, but this will be going to council to approve in December. So we wanted to bring this forward to the board to share the projects that we're looking at this year and also request an endorsement of the projects. And so the projects we have now, there's a couple Dash projects that we put in here. So Dash technology is one where we know we need an updated CAD AVL system. So we have some funds for that now, but we're looking to put in additional funds for that project. And then also we're putting in $1 million for future Dash charging equipment. Gives us some time to think about what our needs are, but this would likely be more for en route chargers was kind of what we were thinking. And then we have 3 projects on here, Mount Vernon Avenue North, which is a project that's currently funded by CMAQ. The focus is we have a couple intersections in Alexandria. We're looking for more funding for the Mount Vernon and Glebe intersection. And then we also have a multimodal access study project here. This was really to look at the recommendation to provide better pedestrian access from the new Inova Hospital site at Landmark over 395. So this would be a study that would look at kind of the feasibility and what that might look like. That would be a massive project, so we want to get ahead of that with the feasibility study. And then also our Safe Routes to School program, are the recent walk audits we did for the middle schools, high school, and then Ferdinand T. Day. Those were the only schools that weren't done in 2017 when we did our walk audits. Those will be published soon, and there's a number of recommendations for projects within those programs for better ped bike access around schools. And so this would be money to actually implement some of those projects. So happy to answer any questions about any of that. But we are requesting endorsement of the projects for council.
I think these are great priorities, and I think it's very appropriate we send a letter endorsing the projects that were selected. Other comments from the board about the letter as it's presented in our packet? If not, we can motion.
Yeah, just that the table on the letter doesn't total the five, it says 4.5 million.
The one that David's gonna sign does.
Okay.
I'm sure, yeah, this is why we have a budget for us.
That's right.
That's right. David, I move that we vote to endorse, or do you have a question?
No.
Okay, yeah, so I move that we endorse the
Right,
recommendation.
that's it. Endorse the letter. Is there a second? Second by Matt. Any further discussion? All in favor, Marat?
No,
Oh,
this was.
oh, you're ready. Okay. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we'll sign the letter. It will be sent forward to the council. We had a strategic planning committee meeting update. So I know Steve's not with us tonight, or is that I see we've gone on other board members. Was the strategic planning part of that, or are we not gonna have an update on that tonight with Steve's absence?
I mean, I think it was just to let you know that we met. We had a great meeting, I think. Really appreciate the committee members' input. They reacted to our draft goals that we had come up with, that we built on from the previous. So I think this is more just to let the board know that progress is being made, and we're hopeful that with the tweaks that we're going to make based off the committee's feedback, we'll be able to come back and present those to you at the next meeting. So anybody else wants to add anything?
I think it was a good progress. And like Josh said, the goals and objectives that was presented to the board prior to the summer recess, they worked with the staff. I mean, Josh worked with the staff to actually building and 5 goals instead of the 3 that we had, and then mapped, whatever we asked, whatever we were trying to accomplish to the new goals. And there's some strategic initiatives that are being built and all that. I found it very productive, and I think it's more what's the word I'm looking for, more functional than what we had initially started. I think so that's very useful. So thank you for Stephanie was part of the discussions, and Stephanie and the baby and Raymond, they're all part of it, and I think we had a very productive conversation. So I'm looking forward to presenting something in December.
Forward to receiving the final report. And I heard very similar comments from Steve as well, who shared with me that he came out of that meeting very energized. So that's great to hear.
Yeah, just to add, I think Josh and his team put a lot of time and effort into it. And so thank you for working on that. I think it does lay out a really nice framework and hits a lot of the kind of comments that were made initially. So appreciate it.
Yeah.
We always have time for others who serve on boards and commissions within the city or associations. Any comments or upcoming events that would be useful for the benefit of the group? No?
I think like just one comment is, once we are done with this strategic plan, as we initially discussed in the, when was it, last February, the retreat that we had, there are going to be a lot of probably paths or tracks that will drive from the strategic plan. So that might be actually a good opportunity to start discussing which ones of those would require committees that we to build and all that. So that that might be useful.
And this is not an official report out from any committee, but I will just share that the idea of a sports circulator has escaped out into the wild. And I am mostly hearing positive feedback about it as what Like, I-
Did
I-
it escape from your?
No, it wasn't me. I was at a town hall with a member of council, and the member of council was like, one of the things we're considering is this sports circulator. And everyone there was like, oh, that's a wonderful idea.
So how would it work?
How would it work?
We talked about this at our own meeting.
Sports.
Yeah, 2 meetings ago, we talked about this. This notion Dash has been
It's
talking
a,
about.
it's a, it's basically
Right.
a contract charter request.
Right.
From
right,
the sports groups
correct.
that it would run at certain time of the day to move kids between the athletic fields
Sure.
in the community. And
This was in Josh's report.
yeah,
maybe,
so
too.
they,
sorry,
they
yeah,
asked,
I
they
don't
asked,
remember.
they asked basically,
Yeah.
could we do it? And I said, well, everything relies on money.
That's right. That's right.
And I don't know, again, it's come back, but you know, again, it's a question of.
Yeah, and
Is there?
And I'm
money out
sharing
there?
it mostly as an observation that this came under the line of commentary of Dash is doing really cool things, right? Like the people, the way this landed with the community was very much in the line of like Dash's brand right now is very much viewed as like strong, cool, innovative, forward thinking. So I just wanted to share that I'm hearing good things
I think
about.
that also feeds into our board member
That's
recruitment.
right.
People are gonna say, I want to be part of
That's
something that's innovative. That's cool. And just to, it doesn't affect, as I know there are prohibitions on what we can do in the charter service, but this is not, this would be publicly funded, so is that why there wouldn't be?
I don't think it's publicly funded, and
Oh.
we don't have those prohibitions except in regards to the federal assets. Meaning so that when we receive the federal money, right, so everything we have right now has been secured using non-federal assets, so we don't have a restriction. It
But
would
we
be no
will
different than
in a couple of years.
the 102 Act, for
Okay.
example. Same kind of concept that we had with DoD, that was a charter service. There isn't a specific group of people, right? It's targeted towards kids, so theoretically anybody could jump on it.
Right.
But I don't know why anybody would.
Right.
Based on what they've been asking about.
Right.
So, yeah, that's. You know, that's one of the things that we haven't really sorted out. The reality is, it's still. It's an idea.
Theoretical, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, there's still things to hash out.
Well, it's great to, I mean, when people want more service for whatever
Totally.
reason, I'm
Totally.
delighted. So, yeah, I look forward to hearing more about how this is being fleshed out.
Anything to get kids to Witter without their parents having to. drive
Right.
there. About Duke's River.
I'm not an unbiased commentator on this.
We get a lot of comments on that, so glad Dash can step up.
All right, we're gonna move into the general manager's reports. We're gonna talk about supplementals and reductions.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. In fact, I'm gonna talk about three things. I'm gonna cover supplementals, reductions, ridership, and financials. Hopefully to help make things efficient for you, for the remainder of the meeting. So starting with, supplementals, this is a follow-up to your discussion at last meeting. You all spoke pretty extensively about the content of the letter that you want to send to the city manager's office, which has gone in, I believe, with other boards and commissions priorities. So very much we took that information and have built upon that for the formal set of supplementals. So we'll start there. And as everyone here knows, and anyone who's watching, this is an annual process that is asked by the city. There is no guarantee of what happens with supplementals and reductions. That's a city process, but we are asked to do this pretty early on. So this is an action item for you. The prioritized supplementals, as are seen here on the screen and as well as in your packet, are as follows. The first one is related to local match. This is new, but it is just simply following along with the city's process to treat grant match as a supplemental request. Historically, Dash has placed this in our current services operating budget. And so this is just a shift in the process of how we submit this. So the first supplemental is for $54,000. This is matching funds for technologies and public transit interns. More specifically, on the technology side, we are looking to pursue an infotainment technology, which is more about onboard passenger information. So there is technology out there now that right now you ride the bus and you hear an announcement says this is this stop and this is that stop, et cetera. But something more robust that would be on the vehicle, that would tie into the CAD system and would provide you kind of like you might see on a subway car, like if you ride the new metro trains, the 7000 series trains, and you're seeing where's the next stop, or here are system announcements, system messages, disruptions, detours, all of those kinds of things. So that's what we're hoping, that the state would view that as a innovative new technology for us to pilot here in Alexandria and look at. The other technology that we've looked at, and these are not totally solidified, but this is our budgetary estimation, is a technology that will help to reduce the likelihood of bus to pedestrian impacts that are involved in the turning process as a result of visibility issues on the A pillar of the bus. So that is, whether you're in a car or a bus, you have some pillars right in front of you. On the bus, they're wider and they tend to be right in the field of view of the turning when the bus is turning. So we're talking with technology providers to try to figure out, are there ways to help reduce the likelihood of those impacts. We did pilot a system a number of years ago, many of you may be familiar, called Mobile Eye, and it's a radar detection technology that decided that it really didn't like Alexandria. We have way too many people walking up and down the streets next to the bus, and way too many times the buses are intersecting with passengers. So it was basically alarming constantly, and turned out to be a technology that was not going to work to help address this problem. So those are the concepts we're working on, but this is really just to include a local match component in the budget process so that we have the ability to leverage applications in the state process.
Just do any bus manufacturers use and leverage video technology to basically have a camera on the outside in that a post bus, and then the inside is basically video screen, so it makes it essentially makes it transparent, right? Yeah, okay.
That's
Yeah.
what this is.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
But we don't know that that's exactly the solution.
Got it, okay.
It's the concept of it.
And Josh, would our insurance providers be able to pitch in? Because it would save them potential liability.
We are looking, so as you know, I chair our insurance pool. We are in a pool insurance, so we're sort of self-insured. There is a program there for safety, a grant program. It's a smaller amount each year that transit systems can use, but we have talked about this on the board of the pool as well. And Stephanie serves as my alternate, so we both attend those meetings and we've had some conversations with them. So. But moving along here, the remaining ones, 2, 3, and 4 are based off the discussion the board had. These are primarily based off of the ATV and the new Dash network. So these are improvements that are called for as a part of that plan. As you might recall Ross mentioning earlier, the importance of continuing the implementation of that. Again, supplementals, because we recognize those are new investments that the city would have to consider, and they are not a part of our current services submissions. The last item here at the bottom, this is, I call this a non-ranked or non-prioritized supplemental. This is a contractual requirement that came a part of the most recent collective bargaining process. And so for those who are not familiar with this clause, as we work through the very tail end of the negotiations, what we ran into was a difference in what we were able to put on the table based off of the budget process and the timing of when the contract was being done, compared to what the demands were from the workforce at the negotiating table. So this was a last minute sort of creative idea that I recognize is not ideal, but the reality is that it was what we needed to do in order to secure our contract. And essentially what this does is this puts forward on top of the existing increase, which is a 4% annual increase in July 124 and July 125, to move that to a 5.5% increase. So it is not something that's a part of the current contract that they would receive that amount. This is an above and beyond component. in order to address the implications that this has and the reality that this is not how we want this process to work, we also had a robust conversation about the importance of the collective bargaining process shifting to timing that is appropriate to the city's budget process. Not only the city's budget process, but the dashboard budget process. So we also got a clause in the current contract that for the next negotiation, we will no longer have to do this. In fact, the negotiation will be stipulated to begin and take place during the time that we are working through the budget process. And I think that it's important for me to acknowledge that this clause skirts the line of the board's role fiscally. And I want to state that publicly that I do not take that lightly. I recognize the implications that it has and do not want us to be in that situation again. And that is why I have made sure that we have those clauses in regards to stipulations of negotiations and that process. Again, is it being submitted as a supplemental is just that. It is not a guaranteed thing, and it is recognized that it would be non-prioritized in the sense of how the board is taking up the prioritizations of the board and the discussion. So that's basically what the supplementals look like, and we would propose to submit those very much in the same way that you see presented here in your packet, and convey them to the city manager's office currently, reflecting it. And I will also say that as it relates to this contractual stipulation, the city manager is familiar with this. The two of us had a lot of conversations throughout the negotiation process, so understands the various intricacies of that and the reality of why that would be there.
David, do you want a motion before we go to discussion?
I mean, I have some discussion. It's, I mean, I guess it depends on where the discussion takes us in terms of the motion, but if you want to put something on the table here.
I mean, I was willing to move to, submit the supplemental unless you wanted to sort of do questions and discussion.
Okay, I mean, so I'm gonna request that we separate the contractual one. We're gonna vote separately on the contractual one from the prioritized supplements. That's something that and you'll understand why in a moment. But if you'd like to put a motion, you can put two motions on the table. I think if you want to move each of them, we're just gonna take separate votes on them.
I mean, so I move that we approve the supplemental to submit to the city manager.
Okay. And we'll separate the question. So Josh and I talked at some length about
Point of order, you have right, so you do have an original motion. So the rules of order call for him to rescind his original motion if he's modifying it. If not, you need to see if it's seconds before.
Oh, I'm sorry.
To see if it dies.
I think there was a second from Matt, but
Yeah.
So if the motion was on the original and it's seconded, then you can discuss and then that can be modified.
okay.
Does that make
So we have
sense?
moved, yeah.
So I can, as the presiding officer, I can separate a question, can I, about or do I have to take a
Well,
vote
he
on
can
it?
rescind his.
Yeah, if that's clear, I'll just rescind that original motion.
Okay, I just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify.
No, absolutely. No, I'm glad-
So
I'm glad
you
we get this
rescinded
good
that,
record.
and
Yeah.
offering the new motion.
Yeah,
Got it.
I'll
I got it. Okay.
which was second by that.
Got
So, Josh and I spoke at length about the contractual supplement. I found out, Josh and I spoke at times after negotiation sessions just to get a sense of where things were. And I was briefed on this after it had been agreed to. And, I've said, and I reiterate that Josh and his team did an extraordinary job of negotiating this with, so those of us who were here 4 or 5 years ago, remember the acrimony that existed. And I think that this was a way to kind of bring those discussions to a close so that there wasn't going to be any uncertainty for passengers about the status of service and employees continuing to come to work as the prior contract had expired. What I said to Josh after he had briefed me on this and we kind of talked about is that, from a board standpoint, supplementals are always our board's prerogative, because that is our responsibility to determine the budget of the organization. And, when we look at this, it's not an inconsequential amount of money, and certainly, and I agree with Josh wholeheartedly, and my understanding of the negotiations as well, the city manager was read into this as it went along and understood the genesis of this, and that this was not something that originated from the board. But what I would have liked to have seen happen, and we talked about potentially the need for this in negotiation, was that we came together as a board for a session where we discussed that this was on the table, just as Josh went to the city manager and said, you know, these are the economic factors we're looking at, and so here's what we would need budget-wise to do this and that, what can we work with, so he could then go back and talk with them. So we would have said, yes, you know, we agree to this in concept, that this is gonna go and it's gonna be considered against the other supplementals that we have as well, because, you know, we might, for example, we're discussing, you know, as we discuss these in public, these are public documents, a news media source might write a story about this, and we might be somebody the largest number of supplementals in the entire city, possibly. I don't know, but these are large numbers, and we've got one that's added in there, and that we should have talked about this before it came up tonight. And so Josh, I think, understood and reacted to my concerns, and I think what we heard tonight was him saying, you know, how this is a one-time thing that came about in large part because of how the structure and the calendar of how this budget negotiation proceeded, and that by realigning that, these things are going to come to us, and so this is going to be a one-time thing. But as an institutionalist, this board, which I kind of feel like I've become over the years, I feel very strongly that we have to, you know, that I have to say something about the role of a contractually required supplemental that was never discussed and originated with us. And so therefore I will abstain on the vote, because I do want to, you know, put that out there, my concerns, but at the same time, I don't want to draw more attention or make our workforce feel like I am against raises for them. They should be compensated appropriately, and that's not what this is about. This is really a process thing, but I commend Josh for engaging with me and discussing through this, so we make sure the board is not put in this position again, and also commend him again for the way the negotiations were moved forward, and that truly this was an innovative idea, just to bring the sides together and say, let's get this settled where everybody can feel like they walked away with something. It's just one piece of this, because this was brand new, just didn't happen. And so that's why we're separating these questions, because I will need to vote differently on that supplemental. But I put that out there for the board just to say, this is, you know, how my take on it. So there's further discussion is welcome on this. Send everybody to silence. So. So if that is, and certainly I'll defer to Josh, who seems to know Robert's Rules of Order quite well, as to if anything further needs to be done to separate these, because we do have a motion in a second. I don't know if the original.
It's probably cleanest for you to just call them separately.
Okay,
So
I'm going to
do that one,
okay.
complete the first one, and then do a second one for the.
Prioritize supplementals. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed, any abstentions?
Abstain.
There are 3 abstentions. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 voting in favor of that. Contractual supplementals, all in favor. Let's just raise your hand if you're in favor of that. I count 1, 2, 3, 4. This is gonna fit. It's gonna. So you have, how does an
So if you
abstention?
abstain, is 1 against, 3 abstentions.
Well, no, I'm at a 4. I'm at a
Oh, you're okay.
I think if all 4 are abstaining, it's the majority of those voting.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's just like, we don't count it all.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay,
There might be other.
so we
people
don't have an
who
issue
do
with
that.
that. Okay,
So the motion passed.
Yes.
okay, so we, 4
Yeah.
in
Abstention
favor.
is staying out,
Okay.
abstention is not.
I think we didn't get the
participating,
formally
correct.
raising the hand, so on the contractually required supplemental, all in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Any opposed, raise your hand. Any abstentions, raise your hand. Okay, I think we got it. All right, thank you, and thank you for that.
Kendall, you abstained?
Yeah.
For both?
The
Yes.
3 city staffers abstained from voting.
Now we have to talk about reductions.
Yes, reductions. Equally important part of the process here, and this is part of our participation with the city's budget process. So at the same time that we are identifying supplementals, we are also identifying ways to meet a reduction target. The reduction target that was requested this year is 1% of the FY24 approved general fund budget, which is totals $313,412. There are stipulations provided in regards to what can be put on the table, and those are reflected on page 12 of your packet. This has not changed from the previous year. However, I will recognize and appreciate the city and the city staff and the budget staff and finance staff and everybody who's helping to make it not 2% as now 1%. So these things are painful regardless. We recognize that, but reducing the percentage is always helpful. So one-time service reductions, hiring freezes, increases in vacancy savings, early retirement savings. So you can't do anything really temporary there. Chargebacks, doesn't really particularly, I think, apply to us. Savings resulting from rent adjustments doesn't apply to us, and deferring vehicle purchases is not something that we put on the table. So we have traditionally done, have brought forth 3 scenarios for you. One scenario that focuses on a way to balance this and find to reach the goal while balancing it between administrative reductions and service reductions. We have a scenario that is service heavy, and we have a scenario that is much more administrative heavy. As I've talked about in previous years, the portion of our budget that is quote administrative, that's discretionary in that sense, is very, very small. So any administrative reduction that we can do, we identified. Unfortunately, though, strictly administrative, you just really can't get there, even when you leverage everything we possibly can pull out. We have identified, however, a number of opportunities in eliminating software subscriptions, reducing telecommunication costs, doing consolidation, eliminating some services, a slight reduction to the printing quantity of ride guides, reducing outsourced maintenance costs and working to bring more of those in-house, reducing legal costs. This is a big credit to the team's understanding of labor relations and labor management. We years ago had put a pretty sizable chunk of money in there for that, and we were able to reduce that even further. And then also pulling Dash out of the WMATA OFA agreement, which is actually a pretty sizable cost, which is associated with Smart Trip and the fare box systems. And that follows the fare free framework policy that this board adopted, and recognizing the timing of our being fare free. There are other various reductions. We basically have gone through every line item and sort of snipped and trimmed where we can in that scenario. The service cut only scenario brings forward, I'm sorry, I apologize. In scenario 1, there is a service reduction on line 104. We recognize this is not ideal, and this is not something that benefits the progress that Dash has been making, but line 104 is the only service or the line that is in the system that has the least ridership and the lowest post-pandemic recovery throughout the entire system. It is a commuter line as opposed to an all-day line represented by the 100 instead of it being a 30 some odd line. So that does bring that service, weekday service, to every 60 minutes instead of 30. The service cuts only scenario includes that reduction as well as the reduction on line 102 from every 30 to every 60. Again, you can see just how much money we come up with when we start addressing service. Kind of gives you an example of sort of where all of our costs are going. Again, not ideal, but recognizing we need to put that forward as an option. And then scenario 3, which is as many and every administrative reduction we could possibly find. So this includes everything that we've identified in scenario 1. Again, eliminating administrative, training, travel, and conferences, elimination of any remaining recognition programs that are not contractually mandated by collective bargaining. So that would be anything such as the annual picnic, customer service incentives, and miscellaneous items. Just to give you a concept, at the current level, staff each employee is basically costing us $34.28 per year for all of those things. So that's kind of the amount of money that we're spending on each individual employee in these areas. And we believe that that is a pretty small amount, in recognizing the importance of those. So that's why it's not in the recommended scenario. And then also eliminating printed ride guides. This has been a discussion in the past. and as an option, the reality is that if we did that, we would have to move to a fully electronic passenger information ride guide type scenario. So the scenarios are further outlined on page 13 of your packet in the various respective priorities, you know, on the staff side. Happy to have any discussion. I will say that we really don't get there. The number of 313,412 is not accomplished in any scenario without any kind of service being put on the table. And I think that what we found last year in the discussion and in my discussion with the city manager was that we shared that information with him so that he understood the modular options that were presented. So when this board advanced the options, we actually, in our meeting with him, went through those and explained what they were, and he was able to choose what portion of that reduction he chose to take. Because we had the same scenario last year.
So
Yes, ma'am.
this is all hypothetical, right? I mean, we don't have to do this.
The only reason that we're talking about this is because of the structure that we have to. The city has to do this with every department and every area. It is an internal discussion, though, on the city side. So as that's all worked out, then what those choices are made during the budget process are eventually then incorporated into the proposed budget.
Yeah, so I ask by saying like it almost disincentivizes us to be more efficient for the time being. Because like, I wonder if you said contracting out our maintenance costs money and would be better off doing it in-house, why not just do it in-house?
So there are implications to that. The primary one is finding ways to staff up to reach that. The other implications, though, that have to do with that are finding creative ways to align the maintenance process to accomplish this. I think, to your point, it's something we're going to do anyway. The reality is, though, this comes very early in the process. So we're anticipating this. And of course, we submit current services very early in the year also. By the time we get to the end budget piece, you're right. Some of these things will happen regardless. In the ideal scenario, we would accomplish that and be able to reduce or send back funds to the city or allow them to be reallocated in order to cover other areas where there might be overages. So I don't think, I get your point. Something like that is a broad statement. There's probably a lot of technical components to that and ways that we're going to navigate that internally. We're going to do that.
Okay, I mean, but it's
yeah.
an accurate statement though?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I will say we've chipped away at this year over year. Historically, like when I first joined Dash, so much of our work was just being sent out. We were a shop that was doing preventative maintenance oil changes. And I don't want to discount any of the hard workers that we have. They do a phenomenal job, but their capacity in regards to the number of people they had, the equipment they had, limited them. So gradually, year over year, we have equipped them with the ability to do more of this stuff. A simple example, although we haven't tackled this, is we have hybrid buses and electric buses. We have no ability. We don't have a crane in our facility to service those, right? So the facility was never even thought about in doing that. We're talking about that, trying to figure out how in the future that might be an opportunity for us to continue to reduce the costs of having to farm stuff.
So one last question then. So when you do the analysis on cost benefit or what saves money, what's the time horizon? I mean, is there the investment calculated in there? Like, or is that a capital expenditure, not part of your operating budget?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
I mean, the capital piece is a substantial one, right? And so when you're talking about heavy equipment that you need to build into the CIP process, for example, or something like that, it is a longer term discussion. But the other thing that I think has changed is that as a result of collective bargaining, we are a more desirable employer now. And so we've also been able to attract more talent and more people to be able to do more of this, which was a challenge that we had before.
Thanks.
Josh, so when you know, as we saw last year, basically anything we send up as an administrative cut has been taken to order to protect service, but it's assumed that the organization can weather that
Mhm.
fairly well. And so if we go with scenario 3, we're basically likely going to have this and have to manage that within the organization. It's unlikely that because those are less public facing things that we would likely see those funds restored if we said we could do without them to meet the 1% cut. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, the hard part here is that we have to do this. I think, and I'm looked to our city staff, because I'm not a part of in those conversations. I know there's an internal process where there's a lot of more dialogue. I think that gives the opportunity to really work through these things, and so one of the things I noticed last year was the first year of the new city manager doing this. His different approach to it, and so we got on a call and we went through and talked about all these things in detail with him, which wasn't actually done previously. It was something that was totally separate from that. So, I mean, I'm not sure if you're asking me if I'm comfortable with them.
Well, no, I mean, I think we gather in the document, you know, what some of those of, you know, we're all in workforces and we understand when you start to cut certain things, what that does to employee morale and ability to retain individuals. I guess I'm more just wanting to just clarify that when we have set up administrative reductions, and yes, we only have 1 year under the prior city manager, basically anything we said was an administrative reduction was taken last year as a reduction. And so I just say that to the board and understanding that, you know, we do go through our budget process, but we should expect anything we've said here that we can do without that's not service related will likely be taken, will likely be something that will not get back in the budget process.
Yes.
Because those affect less our riders in day to day, although certainly they could add up cumulatively to the effectiveness of the organization. That was mainly the.
Yes, yeah, correct.
But, you know, and also as we have to do this year after year, we have to look at, you know, basically then the sustainability of some of those administrative cuts, because we have sent up cuts every year and often higher amounts than this. And so that has limited then what's left as a result, because we have trimmed a lot, and certain things we would do anyway, like the termination of the smart trip agreement, that was gonna happen anyway because of where we are with fare free and not requiring the fare boxes to have that software. So I mean, that is a considerable savings to the city, but that was something that was already baked in. And also assumes the continuation of free fares beyond that. But
Josh, did you guys consider a sort of the reductions to 104 in scenario 1 with the minor trip adjustments from scenario 3, and in doing so further protect another $60,000 in administrative reductions? Is that too pervasive a reduction in service for the story we want to tell as part of this exercise? I guess where I'm coming from this is like, I am very much of the mind that we should limit suggested administrative cuts possible, because to me, when we do make administrative reductions, yes, that doesn't show up right away as like the buses coming less frequently, but my time on this board has very much been informative for the quality of the workforce that you guys have built, the organization you've built. I do think like preserving that is important, right? So I think like if there's a path to, you know, sort of only present administrative cuts that are truly like we're talking like the smart trip cuts, the stuff that's not typically essential. And to David's point, like sort of a maybe less robust menu of options for the manager to be like, well, that sounds like something we can take. I'm just curious if there's a path to kind of still do the blended approach, but weight it a little bit more on the service side than the administrative side.
I hear what you're saying. I think that the idea here was that because scenario 3 would have effect on potentially multiple lines.
It's just
and those lines are all day service.
Yep. Okay.
So, I mean, here's the thing: Dash and Transit are moving from the whole country, frankly, post pandemic is moving from a peak based service model to an all day service model, and that's where we need to go. You know, our friends in Park Fairfax, this is not beneficial for them. Right. Absolutely not beneficial. It is not a good thing in any of these scenarios. do we need to reshape the conversation to say where if that service really isn't being used, is there a different variation in the future that maybe we come back later and redesign some things to give them all day,
Yeah.
right, connectivity as opposed to just this peak-based service?
Right.
You know, I don't think that, in my listening to what the manager has said, even what the manager said at the budget retreat, I mean, the reality is that these are really important things to exercises to take, and he recognizes the pain that go along with them. And, you know, I would like to have the conversation with him, which I did last year, just to kind of explain, like, what are the impacts of some of these things? Our goal, though, very much in scenario one, was to do exactly what you're talking about, which was really to stay away from the things that make Dash the place that you want to work. Because I think we had that conversation last year, which is a workplace where you don't have recognition and where you don't have the opportunity to take trainings that are really critical to the development of your career, you don't want to be. So we really did stay away from those and recognize the importance of doing that. So I'm not sure I'm doing a great job of answering your question.
No, this is, yeah.
But that was really our approach with this. And again, I recognize that service reductions probably are not going to be the thing that the city and the city manager want to be looking at. I give him great credit for his vocal support of recognizing how important what the city does as a whole from a service level perspective. So I don't know how that conversation gets navigated, because, you know, it's a conversation yet to be had, as opposed to, I'm having a conversation with you before I get to have a conversation with him, but I see Kendall's hand come up. Maybe she might have also some insight into
Well,
kind of like
I want
some of
to
these
frame it
approaches.
differently. Yes, it's so in 2023, Dash went $1.8 million over budget. City had to balance that out. And part of that is because your services, there's nothing we can do about it. If fuel goes up, if any of that happens, so a true reduction so that can actually be felt by city financially has to be in the service side. Because if we don't do less, it can't cost less. And so I would argue that the service reduction is the only way for the city to actually contemplate a true reduction in the cost of transit services.
Which good, I mean, good perspective. Yeah. And I think in Kendall, of course, you have great insight into all of the details of the fiscal issues and the challenges we faced. And I think one of the things we're really sensitive to is the fuel, the implication of the fuel, the implication of the labor costs, which is really, I mean, that's the biggest driver, right? I mean, the city's seeing that everywhere, not just the Dash, but, you know, so these are really complicated problems to solve. But yeah, so you're right.
The administrative cuts, right? We had this discussion, I think, last time around, and you know, I kind of agree with pretty much everybody's thinking that what the workforce that you're trying to build comes with a cost associated with it. And the service reductions are, you know, we all know that nobody wants to see them. That's the public facing part of it, but is there an effort from your end to show the impact of those service reductions to the city's economy? Because at the end of the day, you're moving people from location to location, and and then, you know, going back to your golden principle that this is a utility, this is not a you know, like a luxury or anything, this is a utility. So basically you are looking at cutting the electricity or the water to certain buildings in the city, and the impact of that is very similar to not transporting people to locations. What does that mean to the city economically? Because I think that would also be part of this equation for the city to actually understand the impact.
Yeah, again, the place I struggle is that we're so far ahead of the process, right? That the city needs to have the opportunity to work through, right? And I think we need to be a partner in in that conversation and helping to tell that story to your point. So that when the city manager or OMB or finance or anybody in the city is saying, hey, I've got this pressure and I need your help in helping to explain like why this is important. That's absolutely critical. The value of transit, the value proposition of transit, to your point, recognizing transit as a way to drive economic prosperity and growth and the development of our communities is really critical. Are we talking about that enough? Probably not. Or have we made progress to helping the community understand that? I think absolutely. I think one of the examples is looking at the robust use of Dash and looking at the robust recovery that Alexandria has had post-pandemic. I mean, go back and watch Kendall's presentation at the budget, retreat. I was going to say hearing retreat. It tells a really phenomenal story about Alexandria. We're a part of that, right? And I can say with great confidence, and I've felt this way as long as I've been here, universally, regardless of leadership, that this city uniquely recognizes that value more than some communities, not all communities, but some. But yes, I think that's a big part of this, right? And long term, it's something that we need to continue to do, and also goes into the strategic plan and goes into our communications, development of our communications has been a part of our dashboards and all of those kinds of things too. So.
And also, I mean, to that, I think you kind of addressed it very elaboratively, but there's also the user costs, right? In the when you're dealing with traffic, right? You deal with congestion doesn't necessarily mean environmental impacts or loss of time for many of the folks that are on the road, and they're I'm sorry, not the fuel that's being burned and the deterioration on the vehicle and all that, but there's also the user cost, and that's also, what does that mean to tell someone that the service that they are taking to work and they're used to this 30-minute headways to increase that to 60 minutes on certain lines. So what does that mean from the user cost perspective? I think those are very important discussions that everybody needs to, we need to monetize that and dump that into that equation. That's my opinion.
So maybe not, but I've got a couple questions, but maybe not quite getting to the point of cost of economy. Do we know just annual boardings impact of like the 104 cuts? I saw we did that for the supplemental side. Is there, I don't know if that's easy to do when you're cutting or not.
No, we could certainly get him. I'm sure. I mean, Martin is on here. He lives in this stuff every day, so he may be able to speak immediately to it. If you would like to chime in on that, Martin. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, as you mentioned, the 104 is our lowest weekday average. I think I'm pulling it up right now. It looks like it's in the ballpark of about 140 boardings on a typical weekday. So multiply that out by the weekdays and you get the annual impact that way. We do have a similar chart that we could kind of share with the board if that's something that you would like to see. I don't know, Edward, I saw you raised your hand for a second, but I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I think so. You had provided me some of those figures, so I had those in front of me right now. I think the 104 it would be 10,000 fewer boardings per year based on what you had provided me earlier. So.
And what percentage of the total ridership is that 10,000?
It's probably about half, probably a little less than half, because you'd be cutting the service in half, so you don't lose one for 1 hour, but it'd be a little less than half the ridership.
I don't think he heard his question. Can I restate it for you? I think I heard you say what percentage of the total ridership?
I just
for Dash?
of that route.
I'm sorry.
That route, well, I would suspect that route is very much more heavily geared towards choice riders. And because of since it's only running in commuter hours, and probably mostly I would guess people are getting off it depending on to connect them with other transit service. So I wonder if you would lose considerably more. I mean, that route would be almost useless running 60 minutes. I mean, it would, you know, it just wouldn't be palatable for the vast majority of the ridership on it. We've never run service at an hourly headways during weekday rush on any route. So we probably don't even have those types of numbers to know what we would, that's probably why it's hard to predict because we don't actually have any experience ever having run service like that. So, but you know, if we have to send something up, we have to send something up, and I understand the spirit and why that was suggested as where to look at service.
And if I might offer to, not that it necessarily makes it easier, that we're really asking the board to sort of approve the staff recommendation to submit, recognizing that there will be an ongoing budget process and a lot of conversations to be had. And I would just say to you all that I really noticed, particularly last year, the involvement that the city brought us into in those conversations was really great. And I think they've always recognized that, and I'm talking broadly for all of the folks that are involved in this process. So I'm confident that there would be more discussion about these for sure, and we could certainly have a more robust discussion. Again, with, you know,
and certainly if the city's looking seriously at our supplementals, it would be very hard. It would be kind of, you know, going in the wrong direction to say we're going to basically make one route useless and then we're going to improve it. You know, when you're looking at the overall transit vision for the city, I mean, so, you know, I think that probably also weighs on the manager and the priorities of council members, and we've seen what they've done in prior years with unfunded portions of the network. So
we just, you know, I want to yeah, I recognize and really appreciate well, you know, everything that we're trying to accomplish with this, and then recognizing it as a part of the larger picture involved in the city. And so you know, again, we don't bring them lightly, but we recognize the importance of bringing them forward.
Yeah, just one other question, and possibly it leads to a point. We've been talking about these reduction scenarios and kind of bifurcating them into service as in line, you know, reductions in the lines and admin. But possibly within that admin, it seems like there are things that are like a reduction in service, not in a more general sense versus like efficiencies, right? Because like in scenario one, I read the final three bullets sound like, and maybe this was kind of getting to Matt's point earlier, they're sound like efficiencies, like your experience, you're recognizing a savings you're going to experience anyway. Yeah, I just put it out there to say it's not, you know, within that 185,000 of admin, some of that is not truly it doesn't read like it's impacting your admin stance. It's just you're getting to put on the books a savings because of past actions you've made or what have you. And my point of saying all that is mentioned a couple of times, it's an ongoing discussion with budget in the city manager's office, and that's the kind of stuff that will get dug into, right? So that's just helpful, I think, for the board to know that's how they're thinking of it, is like, you know, we'll go after efficiencies first because we want to try to not impact the level of service in a general sense. So knowing some of the things in the 180,000 are really fairly non-impactful, or at least as it reads, is good to know.
It makes them you don't walk away from the table damaging Dash.
Yeah.
Or any other department for that matter, if you're doing it the same way. And that's we certainly recognize that's part of the goals.
Further discussion?
Do you want a motion?
Please take a motion.
I move that we adopt the recommended scenario number 1.
Motion, is there a second?
Second, or Jisha, please.
Jason? All right. We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion on the reduction scenarios? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Who
seconded?
All right, thank you. I will move along here. Assuming I get the slide to move. Speaking of service, just want to highlight to you all this chart here that is a reflection of pre-pandemic average, which is the gray bars on this chart. The effect of the pandemic in sort of that dark red color, and then our record-breaking year last year in the green bar. The red line up there is where we are so far this fiscal year. And so you can compare that against our record-breaking year. If that red line continues to do what it's doing, we are likely to be in celebrating another milestone as far as the utilization of Dash. And I can tell you that even Twitter, my Twitter friends who do a lot better than I do. I'm a Twitter follower, but not a good tweeter. If that's even the word you're supposed to use or whatever it's called now. But, you know, seeing people post a picture on a Dash bus at 7 p.m. at night, standing, you know, the aisle is full of standees, you know, we're really moving a lot of people, which is great.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
This is more curiosity than anything. Is there any like benchmarking data, like how we compare to other cities? Obviously, it's not gonna be nominal boardings, like it's some sort of proportional thing, but like this sounds amazing. I just don't know what that means relative to Arlington or whoever. You know, I don't have to be around here. Just is there a way to compare?
Well, we know that regionally and Martin's going to stop me. I was going to say something wrong. He's going to correct me, but we know that regionally we have the highest post-pandemic ridership recovery. I see him nodding. I can see you on my computer, Martin, so please keep nodding. Secondly, there has been some national attention to the fact that we are one of the top systems of our kind in the country. And I'm talking about what, like top 5 or 6, I don't remember, as far as post-pandemic ridership recovery. And so much of that has to do with, frankly, the movement that we did in reworking our network, going fare free, maintaining service levels, right, that people need and use, have all contributed to that success. So I don't know if that really answers your question in the sense of the benchmarking. There's certainly a lot of data out there that we can look at, but as far as post-pandemic ridership recovery, we are way out in front.
Sure. No, I again, it's curiosity. Is there a way to apples it to other jurisdictions? And I'm not even asking for you to get the information, just to know if it was out there.
Yeah.
You could probably do it on the WMATA dashboard. It'd be interesting to see their routes that have remained relatively constant in Alexandria, how their ridership has changed. I would assume it's not as going up the same as Dash, but I think their dashboard might be able to give you that. Did NBTC like do a chart, I feel like recently about something?
Yeah, so MBTC has done a lot of great work.
that's
If you're interested, take a look at that. Not only ridership recovery, but also you know, the economic benefits of transit, the impact of investments in transit. So we are really regionally gathering that data. It's substantial. Martin, did I miss something?
No, you covered it well. I think just to add a little more detail, yeah. So we are well over, I think the last I checked, we were around 25% above our pre-pandemic levels. And that's kind of the metric that we've been using to compare ourselves to other jurisdictions. You know, I still think it's the case that we are the only, as Josh mentioned, the only DC agency that is above pre-pandemic levels, pre-pandemic ridership levels. Major agency, I should say. Fairfax Q also is in the same department. They're also fare free. And I just note I'm disappointed I'm not able to be with you guys there tonight in person. I just spent the last few days out in Phoenix at a conference where I got to speak with a lot of West Coast agencies, and we were talking a lot about ridership, and most of the agencies that I heard were in that 70 to 80% of their pre-pandemic ridership levels. So not just within our region, but also nationally, we're doing quite well.
Lots to celebrate.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, the last part of my report, I just want to cover financials so that when I toss it over here to Martin to talk about the TDP, ATSP stuff, we've covered this, we don't have to come back to it. So Couple of things to highlight about financials year to date. We are tracking pretty well year end as far as our projections for where we should be. We have a lot of front end kind of things that hit our budget, so we are showing a year-to-date deficit that's largely because of some one-time kind of expenses and the timing of certain things when they come in and the bills that we pay. We're going to continue to track that, and I go to bed at night with Kendall's voice in my ear saying, please make sure you keep us informed early on. And so we want to make sure we do that with you, Kendall. We're making sure we talk about sort of what's going on, because we want to make sure as we go through the year that we're really in a, fiscally in the right place. We have identified some things and we've summarized them to you here a little bit about kind of what are the pressures, what are the things that are really affecting us. And I think the one that really stands out to me out of great concern is the inflation impact on supply and parts. It seems to be a curveball that is really outside of what anything we anticipated. And we're talking about everything from tires to brakes to transmissions, and sourcing that stuff for the fleet it's just been beyond anything we ever imagined as far as costs. So we are sitting down right now as a team internally to strategize on a couple of things. One is related to our sourcing of those parts and being even more, what is the term that got supply chain in so much trouble during the pandemic? Just in time, being more just in time, carrying less inventory. Also looking at excess inventory that we might have from old fleet, parts that we can sell off, and maybe even bringing money back in. It's been one of the strategies we've looked at that. And the other one that, as was mentioned earlier, fuel has really been a wild one, but we're still coming in according to our forecast, and we do anticipate, as fuel has been continuing to trend down into the winter months, those summer months started out pretty high. So certainly we can talk about any other questions. And there is an SAO out there, supplemental appropriation ordinance. Is that what it's called?
Supplemental, yeah, it was, we
was-
were hoping to get it in November, but it's gonna be
Okay.
December instead.
So for anybody who wasn't familiar, I just want to make sure the board understands. So that was the portion that the manager basically said in the negotiation process that he was comfortable bringing to the table. The rest we worked out through in budget dash line item kind of adjustments to reach the initial collective bargaining agreement that we have today. So that's what we're talking about as far as what we're tracking against. So I think Edward and them are kind of tracking against some spreadsheets relative to Munis and some other systems, but it looks like you might have a question.
I want to raise some concerns because we're at $3,000 and the board voted last year to basically spend presumed fuel savings, move it to professional development. We moved some money around, so we have a board budget versus what the manager's budget had been. You took savings from the fuel budget had been like 2.4 and now it's 1.9. So where it was initially going to be going well under, now that one is and again, you just said it might get better, but the other place is up at advertising. We haven't ever gotten $200,000 of advertising revenue, but we're forecasting that. So really, I'm seeing kind of concerns that we're already nearly, a couple $100,000 in the hole based on where we probably will end up with some of these things. So it's concerning. And that is part of why the city pushed back on the budget transfer, and Edward's aware of this, to move the money around so early, 2 weeks into the fiscal year to spend savings before it had actually happened.
Mhm.
So
Right.
that's a concern we have. We had it back in July and we definitely have it today.
Understood. And I think that advertising piece is, I appreciate you highlighting that, is a problem. Ever since we started the advertising program, we've never gotten anywhere near even the original amount that was supposed to be brought in. And we've had some conversations with the vendor. The reality is the demand post-pandemic just isn't there. The other reality is we don't have a fleet that is desirable to advertisers for a couple of reasons. One is One is that they'd rather spend their money on a Metro bus that's gonna travel all over the entire DMV as opposed to one that's just gonna stay in the 15 square miles of Alexandria. The other is we have limitations on size and covering windows, and we all had a conversation about this. Say, to respond to you, Kendall, is we are really having a lot of internal conversations really quickly about this. This is the first we're able to sort of see kind of where things are trending. And I think we will be looking to make those course corrections and report back to you all ASAP on those. And implementing them early on in the process, to your point. I mean, if we have to come up with a couple $100,000, we need to be talking right now about where that comes from. And thank you for highlighting the fuel. The reality is that the largest chunk of that fuel was used in the collective bargaining process. And then there was also the chunk of that slight reallocation relative to the city budget. But it does not fall on deaf ears, for lack of another term, or without a thud to me to say that we are limited, if not non-existent of any cushion that we would have. And so that's been the other part of this conversation internally is what can we do, particularly because we need to make sure that in the second part of the year, we're not in a deeper hole than we don't want to be in a hole at all, period. That's the goal and that's the expectation. And I think we can accomplish that. We're just going to have to figure out exactly how creatively that happens and in what ways.
And Josh, one quick comment, and I know we have discussed the struggles with the advertising program this board before. I might suggest that if we have an advertising vendor that's telling us that there are not sufficient businesses and services to market within the city of Alexandria to Alexandria residents, I think we're working with the wrong vendor. Because like there are ample opportunities to take advantage of the 160,000 people who live here, even with our fleet remaining within the borders of the city. So I don't deny that that's what they're telling you. I'm just like, what I hear is that is somebody who has one playbook and is not particularly interested in adapting their playbook to the market that they're operating in.
And that's this is the first ever advertising contract for Dash. So that is a factor that I don't know. Edward might know the terms of the time frame of the current contract, but there's a couple of years on it, and then we have the opportunity to revisit it.
Is it Clear Channel? The contract?
Edward, are you there? No, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, no, it's Gateway. I believe there are 3 base years. I'd have to double check. I know there are at least 2 base years, and then we go into option years. I'd have to double check the number of years we're locked into it, but essentially the first years of the contract, there isn't a contractual minimum that they have to meet. We do forecast based on what they had initially forecasted, higher than that. But I do think it's either this year or next year that we're out of that and then into option years. I'd have to double check the exact years of the contract though.
And they're one of 2 in this area. Because they handle Fairfax as well, and maybe 1 or 2 others, and then WMATA has a different group. But yeah, I will say, with all this said, we're discussing the different strategies related to this, and recognize the importance of trying to figure out how to tackle these things. Moving forward.
Those also remind you that, this was brought forward as a way to try to ensure, okay, Dash can bring in a little bit of extra revenue, but it has also created a lot of headaches and disappointment, frankly. And, but it's one of very few revenue raising opportunities that are out there, but it's really not performing as expected. And perhaps a different vendor, we may see some different results, but there's also other things you have to consider, like how they are able to ensure the ads are placed properly on the buses and maintained, because that's part of the product that we're putting out there, because it's so lumped into how Dash is looking. So you have a lot of considerations of how you work with a vendor besides what kind of ads they can bring in. So
That's right. So hopefully, again, in future fiscal years, with the change to the collective bargaining process, and starting next year, the fact that we are not negotiating a contract basically mid budget, will bring a lot more predictability and stability, I think, to the dash budgeting process. And on the wage side, which is critical, because here we are having to have figured out how to come up with that raise in between the budget. The city's had to put more money in, we've had to reallocate funds, and now we're all in a tight spot. Not an ideal place to be. If there's no further questions, I don't want to keep you here all night, so I was going to go on to the ATSP, or did we cover? We're
We
good.
did, it just occurred to me that City Hall plays Dash tomorrow night in the kickball City Cup tournament, and so we've got. there's-
No. I have not been able to face Kendall since we got whooped back in basketball 6 years ago, so. I would, yeah. Well, we'll see how that plays out.
I do have a question, Josh.
Yes,
Dak brought up Ross, he brought up the 40th anniversary celebration in the spring. Will we get an update on what's planned for that? And
yes, so that
Easter or
is,
something?
so we are planning that based entirely off of sponsorships. So we're working right now to get money brought in to make that event possible. But we're gonna be hopefully here very soon getting out a save the date. And announcing the venue and all those kinds of things, and we'll
Is
make
it
sure that
40th anniversary dash.
it's a
Yeah.
40th anniversary of Dash. So we really want to make it a real blowout celebration, a really awesome opportunity to celebrate not only 40 years, but the highest ridership ever. And post-pandemic and all those things. So right now we're kind of trying to bring all that together, and as soon as we have that fully worked out, we're going to be getting those save the dates sent out.
What's the sponsorship number you need to hit to do the event you want to do?
yeah, that's what it's gonna be like.
Yeah.
What are the details of it? Like, I understand the
I'm
safety
really-
date, but like, are you asking the board members?
No, I'm actually, and the reason I'm asking, I am genuinely curious, because if it's.
What is our role here? Just
Well,
like
I
30?
appreciate you bringing
is
it
there
up.
a
I
year-long
think
celebration or just this one event in the spring? Like, how are you planning to celebrate Dash for 40 years?
Yeah, so we're focused on funding just the event, the
This
celebratory
spring.
birthday. That's what we're looking to do. And I know that the team has been working on it, and maybe what we can do based off of this interest is maybe send out a summary document to you all, since I'm not prepared to really answer those details tonight, and at least be able to give you the framework and those kinds of things. And set the date and all that kind of stuff. If that works. And please, if you know people who would like to be a part of that celebration, who could bring something to the table. You know, we don't want to be using taxpayer dollars for this. We want to be recognizing the system and its success through our partners. And so I think that could potentially be an opportunity to do that.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. And the volunteering to help us. I don't know if that's actually what was said, but.
I'll find sponsors. That's.
I mean,
When we recruit new members, we'll put them.
Exactly right. Yeah,
Their expectation.
That's all right.
Okay, so I'm gonna turn it over to Martin. This is the final agenda item we have to report on for you. And this is a new concept. So Martin, we can see you, and I think we can hear you, so. It's all you.
Thank you, Josh. Good evening again. So the last item here, I'll be relatively brief, hopefully, is the Alexandria Transit Strategic Plan. The purpose of bringing this item to the board this evening is twofold. One, it is to make the board aware of the new state requirement from DRPT regarding our planning processes, and then two, to float the idea that would change how we do our annual service planning process from a board standpoint. This is not an action item. This is just an informational item that will probably or potentially would become a future action item for the board. But the TSP is a new requirement from DRPT. TSP is the Transit Strategic Plan, DRP, Department of Rail and Public Transportation. DRPT has required annual documents and submittals previously, but this is a much more comprehensive document that they're asking us to prepare. This is a 10-year horizon plan that outlines service changes, capital planning. It does an operations analysis, things like that. And actually, I should note that in your packet, I think pages 15 and 16 have a much more detailed summary than I'll provide here. But it's a much more comprehensive document than what we've provided to them in the past. It also coincidentally is very similar to a lot of the things that we've included in our typical TDP, Transit Development Plan, that we go through each spring with you all and with the public. So two things. One is that we would be we're coming up on this process in the spring to create this new TSP or ATSP, I should say. I'm calling it ATSP because TSP already stands for something else, Transit Signal Priority. So I'm calling it ATSP. But we're going to be going through this process in the spring to create this updated this new TSP, working closely with city staff as well. And so that will be coming up. But then I also wanted to raise the prospect that we would be looking to potentially replace the TDP process with this TSP process. So this would not have any impact on the board's authority or discretion over service and fare planning decisions, just changing the vehicle through which those decisions are made. And it would be obviously better aligned with state requirements, which we obviously rely on a lot of funding from our state agency. It also would maybe perhaps be a little more efficient of staff's time, that we would have to provide major updates to this document every 5 years, but the in-between years would be a slightly less labor-intensive process to just provide addendum updates. So I'll stop there, and if there's any questions or discussion, I'd love to hear it.
Great. So just to kind of highlight, Josh had kind of queued this up for me. It will change a lot of, just the documents that we're going through, because every year we approve a TDP, and now that is replaced by this. And Martin, what I hear from you is that in terms of the way the public interacts with us and providing feedback on Dash services, that will not change as we go through this. They will see that, which was something important consideration for me, is making sure that everybody every year can still provide their comments on the Dash service in the way they have now. So at some point we will have to vote, because as you see in the bottom, bullet item, our board member procedures will change, and our, how we do our budget calendar. And so that will need to be incorporated. Josh, I think you were thinking that we would bring this back next month. The board was willing to go, as it sounds like we are.
And just wanted to highlight that obviously we have the strategic plan work going on. These will
You have to do anyway.
Right, these will talk to each other, and I just didn't, we wanted to avoid anybody walking away confused saying, wait a minute, we were just talking about strategic plan. So this is a separate but aligned process.
And Josh, that's exactly right, and I meant to highlight that. So chapter 1, if you look in the docket or the board packet, it summarizes kind of the contents of the plan. Chapter 1 is all about the strategic vision of the agency. So the work that the board committee is doing is going to feed directly into that section 1 in terms of our strategic vision and goals.
Very good. Any other questions for Martin? Thank you so much. So the last agenda item is just to announce that our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, December 13th. I think we were talking about being at the Dash facility next month, and we'll be able to wish happy holidays to each other. If there's no other business, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. So moved. Bessie, is there a second? Second. Matt, all in favor?